Dr. Eric, True North Chiropractic. Today we're talking about neck pain. So, neck pain, what is it? Why do we get it? When is it going to go away? Great questions. Neck pain is quite common. Roughly 7 in 10 people during some point in their lifetime are going to experience some form of neck pain, whether that's waking up from a bad night of sleep, motor vehicle accident, some sports, maybe something that you did at work, somebody called your name and you turned your head real quick and you got a little bit of neck pain. It could be something small like that, but the majority of us at some point are going to get neck pain to some degree of intensity. Sometimes it goes away quite quickly, sometimes it does not. It can be a common injury, so you can have a muscle strain, right? So when the muscle tissues get fatigued, they can kind of cramp up a little bit, or you can get what we call a ligament strain. Ligaments take a little bit longer to heal. That's why sometimes when you do, physical therapy, if you do chiropractic work or manual therapy, body work, things like that, sometimes the pain kind of takes a few visits to get better because it's not just muscle, it's muscle and it's ligament. One of the cases that gets a little bit worse is if you have a disc-related concern that's causing some of the neck pain, and that's what we call a radiculopathy. So you can have pain that becomes so intense that actually go down one arm or both arms at the same time, and you can have some weakness into those tissues as well. That just lets us know that there's more significant trauma that has gone on to those tissues. How do we get neck pain? Well, neck pain, like I said, can be a singular event, something fluky out of the blue, or it can be repetitive trauma. If you're somebody who is constantly on the computer, you're looking down, looking up, looking down, looking up, eventually you're going to kind of wear out those parts. The analogy that I like to give is using a paperclip. So if you take a paperclip and you straighten out that paperclip and you bend it back and forth several times, what's going to happen to the paperclip? Right? The paperclip is going to get hot if you kind of touch it right at that bending part. You go right to that focal point and the paperclip is going to get hot. That's inflammation equivalent in the body. So if you continue to bend that paperclip over and over and over again, it's eventually going to break, right? Our bodies are all paperclips, but the beautiful thing is that we get to go to bed every night and you get to kind of reset that paperclip. So whatever you did to that previous paperclip during that day, well, now I've given you a new one and you have a whole chance to start over. But if you're constantly breaking that paperclip earlier and earlier during the day, that's not good either. So I always teach my patients to be a paperclip, but save your bending for when you need to do it most. So don't use up your body at the beginning of the day and then struggle for the rest of the day. Plan accordingly. Stretch those muscle tissues when you need to. Strengthen those muscle tissues when you need to. Avoid heavy lifting. Ask for help. Those are ways, conservative ways, to help you last a little bit longer as the day goes on. Some of the other concerns for developing neck pain is doing too much, right? So we all know those people who are go, 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 they're doing it all, right? And what ends up happening is when you do it all, you never give your tissues a chance to rehab and recover. So what ends up happening is you're just worn down, you're beat down as the day goes on, and that's not good. So if you start on a Monday and you're shot by Wednesday and you still have to get through Friday, what are you gonna do? Also too, we see people that aren't doing quite enough. So we don't want to use the word lazy because that's not true, but we want to look at those people who are not doing enough to take care of those tissues. They may be doing a tremendous amount for other things, but when it comes to self-care in terms of rehabilitating those tissues, they don't get a passing grade. And that's where we come in as chiropractors, is we actually help to teach you some of the things that you can do so that you kind of get over that hump a little bit. Another thing that we see with neck pain as well is motor vehicle accidents and athletic events. So if you're a soccer player who's always kind of headbutting the ball, things like this, or if you're in a contact sport like a hockey or a basketball, football, lacrosse, even baseball, a lot of these sports have a lot of kind of like a big head movement. So what ends up happening is you can actually start to cause these micro traumas that can follow you later in life. A lot of my patients, they'll come in and they'll report pain into the neck on one side or the other, and when we go through their case history, I'll say, what sports did you play as a kid? And they'll name some contact sport, and I'll say, did you ever have a significant trauma to the area? And sometimes they say absolutely, and they can tell me what they were doing that day and what the temperature was that day and everything. It's a very, very distinct memory for them. And then some people say, oh, I don't really know what I do, but I know I did have some kind of persistent neck pain as I got older. So sometimes these older injuries earlier in life can follow you as you get older. So, what are some of the symptoms of neck pain? Neck pain is, it can be focal, right? It can be kind of local to one side, it can be local to the other side, and it's usually quite pinpoint. Or you can also have diffuse pain, meaning it kind of spreads a little bit. So instead of being specific and saying my pain is here, you'll say it's kind of here, or kind of wraps around in the front, or wraps around behind my shoulder blade, or I get this kind of knot, but I really can't place it. That's diffuse pain. Sometimes the pain in our neck can actually start to creep down in between our shoulder blades, and that's because the tissues and the ligaments have been stretched a little bit. Neurological pain is worse than muscular pain, so it may start off as muscular pain, but the neurological pain is the pain that's been persistent for a long enough period of time, can actually kind of go down the arm, and you can actually start to feel pain into the fingers. You can have pain in the elbow or pain into the shoulder, but anything that kind of creeps down the arm is a little bit more sinister, and we really want to pay attention to that because that's significant pain right there. Symptoms, signs and symptoms of neurological pain, like I had mentioned, is the tingling and numbness. You can actually have muscular weakness. You may start to notice you're dropping things, or if you're someone who writes with pen and pencil, you can actually see your handwriting change. You don't feel like you're holding the pencil as strongly as you once did. And those are also markers of things to check out for. And like we mentioned, radiating pain is more significant because it's telling us that the pain is becoming more extreme. So pain that begins at the base of the neck and then creeps to the shoulder and then creeps to the elbow and then is now down in the hand, that is pain that's actually increasing, not decreasing. Markers of improvement are the opposite. So you may say, hey doc, I had pain in my hand, I had pain in my elbow, it's now in my shoulder, now it's in my neck, now it's focal, now it's gone. That's a marker of improvement. So those are things to check out for as well. The typical life cycle of a patient with neck pain, very similar to our lower back pain patients. It's posture driven. What are you doing all day? What you do all day, every day is going to be a determining factor in terms of what's going to happen to your body in terms of any pain that you have. So typically they'll start off as a seasonal event, right? Maybe you're raking up in the fall, you're shoveling snow in the winter, you're doing yard work, a small trip, maybe you went camping with your family, small isolated events that you don't typically do too often. And you say, yeah, I had neck pain, I put some ice on it, I took some Advil, my pain went away. All right, you got it that time. But what ends up happening is these small amounts of pain slowly start to become more chronic. And what happens is, what do? We reach for medication, right? So we're taking our Tylenols, we're taking our ibuprofen, our Aleve, our Advil, things like that. And we find that those over-the-counters, there's a saturation point and they eventually stop working. So what do? We take more, right? Because if some is good, more must be better. But what ends up happening is you're making your liver work harder, number one, which is not good long-term. But number two, you're taking way too much of this medication and you're still kind of pounding down on those tissues. The analogy that I like to give with our patients is when you take medication, that's like cutting the wires to a fire alarm in a smoking building. So the building is on fire, but you've cut the sound to the fire alarm, so you can't hear that the ringer is going off, but the building is still on fire. But you're just kind of going back to business as usual until eventually the whole floor starts to get smoky, and then sometimes it's a little bit too late. So what ends up happening is once pain goes from being an acute pain to a little bit more chronic to eventually chronic and persistent, that's typically when somebody will seek out the advice and the consult of a chiropractor or physical therapist. And what ends up happening is they'll say, doc, I've had this pain for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, whatever the heck it happens to be. They've tried it their way and their way is no longer working. So what we, as both professions, what we do is we put them in for a round of care. We help to heal them. We talk about corrective exercises, postural distortion, kind of bringing up that posture, sitting up nice and tall, and then they start to feel better and do better. So we've helped to mitigate and solve their pain, and they say, hey doc, thanks, see you later, and then they go back to business as usual. And business as usual is that crummy posture that you had before, bad lifestyle habits, all those sorts of things that we were kind of working to get you better for, and now you're kind of regressing and going back to the way you were. And that's problematic because we're playing this dance where we're getting you better, you get worse. We get you better, you get worse. We get you better, we get worse. And just like that paperclip analogy, sometimes when you break the paperclip, you really break the paperclip, and it's really, really tough to walk that back. So these are the patients that eventually start to go in for the spinal injections. They start to go for medication on top of the over-the-counter. So now you're taking some stuff. Your doctor says, oh, sure, I'll give you a script. And you get a medication. Perhaps there's some side effects. Maybe the medication works for a little bit, then it stops. Possibly there's some chemical dependency with certain medications, so you have to really know your body and things like that. But again, there's a saturation point with those medications too, so they stop working. So a lot of my patients, they'll come in and they'll tell me like the 4 or 5 different medications they've taken. I've taken, this medication, I've taken that medication, and it's no longer working. right? So then what they do is after they've tried the medication, after they've tried the shots, and then they go and book an appointment with a neurologist or an ortho, and they say, hey, look, we've got to go in, then we got to fix it, right? So surgery, they'll go in, they'll do a discectomy, sometimes they'll do a laminectomy, sometimes they'll fuse the vertebrae if there is significant trauma and damage to the area. But now what you've done is you've created a massive shift. And again, with surgery, there's no guarantee, right? My 3 outcomes that I tell patients with surgery is you're going to get better, you're going to get worse, or there's going to be no change. And you went through that whole rigmarole, to get to that point. So did it really serve you, or could you have chosen a different path earlier on that may have prevented you from doing something extreme? Because once they do a surgery, what's done is done. It's very hard to undo something. So you really, really have to be careful with your body when it comes to those sorts of things. So when we tell our patients, that they've got a neck issue, we always say, patient, be patient, right? It's a very, very simple and easy analogy that we give our patients, a mantra that we give our patients, but it's true. You can't rush it. When you have a significant trauma to the area, a lot of people, they'll say, well, it happened yesterday, so it's probably going to be gone like in a day, right? Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. One of the things that we always tell people is, these tissues, they've held you up for an entire lifetime, and now all of a sudden, just because you had pain one day, it's not going to go away in a day. You have to let the body heal itself. We can't speed up that process, but what we can do is we can give you the actionable abilities to kind of help you heal it on its own, right? So as chiropractors, we help you out, we make the body feel better and do better, and then we also teach you some stuff. So we teach you how to catch the fish. I don't want you to keep coming back. Me handing you a fish, I want you to be able to fish for yourself, and a lot of that comes down to patient responsibility. So if you want to get better, I want you to get better. I always give you 110%, and if the two match, then we're going to get along fine, and you're going to heal up, and you're going to feel great, and you're going to do better, and then life is going to be roses again. Some self-care tips. So this is very, very important. It always begins with your posture. How do you sit? How do you stand? When you're playing and you're horsing around and you're doing your leisure and your activities, what are you doing? Are you using proper biomechanics of your body? Are you well positioned to do all those sorts of things? Are you engaging in sports that are going to cause your pain to be worse? Are you someone who works at a desk, for example, and then goes and plays a high-level game of soccer where you're headbutting the ball all the time and you're crashing around? You may potentially make your trauma worse. How are your sleep habits? Do you sleep with 1 pillow? Do you sleep with 22 pillows? Is your pillow so old that when you fold over your pillow, it stays folded? Those are some small things that can actually make your pain worse without you thinking that your pain is being made worse. Are you bending and reaching and twisting, for example, with proper form? Are you straining to lift up cases of water? Are you really kind of pushing those muscle tissues harder than they need to? And then in terms of exercise, what are you doing when you go to the gym? Are you taking on a lifting protocol or a strengthening protocol that is actually supporting those tissues to help to keep the muscles nice and strong? Or are you doing something that is contrary to that? So if you're doing yoga or if you're running, those are great exercises to kind of bring blood flow and oxygenation to the body. But if you're not actually physically strengthening those areas, then we're missing the boat in a certain degree. So if you're a runner and you have neck pain, you can't run more miles. It's not going to solve your problem. So we really have to be thorough when we give you these corrective exercises. Self-care tips continued. Stretching versus strengthening. Both can be too much of a good thing. My big take home is we always want to make sure that you're going to stretch a muscle tissue that's too tight and you're going to strengthen a muscle tissue that's weak. It's a very broad concept. There's a lot of sub layers to that in terms of the exercises that we teach you in the office, both how to stretch and how to strengthen, because oftentimes they'll come in with preconceived notions, or they'll come in with some biases about how they are going to heal their own body, and sometimes you're right on the money and we're both on the same page, but sometimes your online research that you've done may be a little bit misguided. You may be using antiquated methods, or you may be using the wrong rep scheme, or the intensity of your workouts is far too high. So if you come in and you say, Doc, I've been doing some exercises that I found on YouTube and I'm getting worse, what the heck is going on? I'll say, well, those exercises are fine, but show me your form. And I look at their form and it's terrible, or they're using weight that's far too heavy, or they're missing the boat somehow, some way. And I'll say, well, here's what we want to do. You're 50%, 60% there. Let's help you get to that next, let's get you a passing grade, right? So we kind of start basic and we work our way up. So you want to stretch a muscle tissue that's too tight, and you want to strengthen a muscle tissue that's a little bit too weak. Self-care tips continued. Using ice versus using heat. Very, very important because both are a little bit different in terms of when you use them. When I have people use either of those methods, you're going to ice or you're going to heat for about 10 to 15 minutes. You're going to take the rest of the hour off, and what you're going to do is you're going to repeat as needed depending upon what you've done. When you have a chronic injury, something that's kind of on again, off again for the last couple of years, you're more or less likely safe to use a little bit of heat. If you have an acute injury, like you looked a certain way and you got a crank in your neck, or you did something, you woke up and you have a stiff neck, you want to start by using a little bit of ice, especially if the area feels hot and tender and swollen. What we remember from chemistry class back in the 9th grade is heat is a chemical accelerant, right? And if I want to cook a burger, I can't just put it on the stove and walk away. I have to apply heat in order to cook the meat, in order to get the nutrients, in terms of cooking it. So if you're using heat on an area that's already inflamed, you're actually increasing the blood flow and the oxygenation to the area. So you're actually doing too much of a good thing, and the tissues now get stressed. So these are the people that'll say, "Doc, I put some heat on my neck. Boy, oh boy, it felt good. But then I went to go sit up and I couldn't move, and I had to hold my neck for the rest of the day because the muscle tissues felt weak. They felt like they had no support." And that's true, because you relax the muscle so much that it can no longer hold the weight of your head against gravity. So these people are usually bedridden, or they come in and they're walking around like Frankenstein because they're in so much pain. The intensity of the ice and the intensity of the heat is very, very important. You don't want to make them either extreme. So you don't want it to be too hot, nor do you want it to be too cold. You want to wrap a towel or some sort of cloth around those devices in order to kind of mitigate the temperature a little bit. If you found that the ice or the heat is not to your liking, then you can kind of remove one of those layers and kind of bring up the temperature in either direction, and that'll help you achieve your objective. The call to action. So if you're somebody that you know has neck pain or suffering from a chronic on again, off again pain, and it's just not getting better, or if they say, "Hey, look, I feel like my pain is getting worse," have them give us a call. We as chiropractors, we work with neck pain all the time. A lot of the work that I do in my office is corrective exercise based. We teach you how to catch a fish, and then I hand you the fishing pole and I say, "Go have at it." Our goals are your goals. If you want to get better and you're committed to getting better, we're right there with you. If you are somebody who just wants to come into the office once or twice a year to get relief care, we're there for you as well. But we always make sure that we over deliver when it comes to your health, because you only get one body, and you're not getting a neck replacement anytime soon. So let's take care of the parts that we have, and we can do that together. So you can give us a call at the office. You can also visit our office website. We're more than happy to help to take care of you. Okay?